Welcome to the last session, everyone. My name is Ondrej, and I'm your Vice President for Education. And with me is the Vice Principal, Ruth Taylor. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. We will not be going through the comments when the session is airing, but I will go through the comments afterwards and I'll collate them and address them afterwards. So a little bit about me. I work for AUSA and I represent your views and everything on matters academic to the university. And so with me, as I said, is Ruth. So Ruth, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hello, my name's Ruth Taylor. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me along to this session, Ondrej. I'm the Vice Principal for Education, and my responsibility is around the academic and the student experience for all of our students across the institution. I've been responsible for leading the work across the university in our move to blended learning because of the COVID-19 situation. And that decision to move to blended learning was very much around ensuring safety and well-being of our students, and at the same time making sure that we can continue to offer you the best possible student experience in the context in which we're working. So thanks again, Ondrej, for having me here.
So thank you for the introduction. So just to let everyone know, the session is mostly around answering the questions that got submitted to us over the period of roughly 2 weeks. So I'm just gonna continuously read out, all of the questions that were submitted. So let's kick off. So the first one is regarding somebody will lose out on their labs by not being able to return on campus. What measures are being taken to ensure that the labs will run equal level for students that are on campus and online?
Thanks, Ondrej. Yes, so in the context of coronavirus, we need to ensure that we are absolutely safe on campus. So there's a whole lot of work going on, which we'll probably touch on in relation to coming back onto campus. So we have prioritised the opportunities for students to go into the labs and are doing everything that we can to make sure that that happens. In alignment with that, though, we're also doing a couple of other things. One is that there's some really good work has gone on, particularly in engineering, for example, where some of the lab-based activities are able to be delivered online. So that means that we have that contingency and actually a really innovative way of working. And secondly, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, do we? There could be another lockdown. We really hope there won't be. But if there is, I just want to reassure anybody who has labs as part of their learning that you would not be assessed on anything that you haven't had the experience of. So we might look, for example, to delaying the labs till later, or for your assessments, we would be thinking about, well, how would you use the data in terms of your assessment? So anybody who is potentially disadvantaged in this area won't be disadvantaged because we'll make sure the right sort of contingencies are in place. But just very briefly, we hope to have the labs running over the next few weeks when you all come back. So we're looking forward to that.
So that's great to hear that you're prioritizing the labs and that hopefully the students will get the experience as near as they used to. So another question is very similar. So it's regarding tutorials and labs in person. So would there be a certain, student amount requirement about how many are actually required for there to be a tutorial or for there to be a lab? And a lot of students are studying from home, so can that prevent that from happening, or would they still go ahead?
They will still go ahead. So we do understand that students are still taking decisions about whether they're going to study fully online or whether they're going to come back to campus. We know that quite a lot of you are coming back to campus because we can see that from the interactions we've had. However, if there was a situation where an on-campus experience had smaller numbers than we anticipated, we might adjust what we do with you, but you would still have that on-campus experience. That's really important. You will want to be on the campus as much as you can in the situation that we are in.
Thank you. That's really helpful. So it's good to know that there is other plans in place for in-person sessions, especially under smaller numbers, which might sometimes be even better for engaging
Yeah.
with other people. So another question, in terms of education, how will this academic year look like? It's particularly question around like they call it a hybrid system, so we call it the blended learning. So would you want to explain that a little bit in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, there's lots of terms floating around, aren't there? And so, yeah, we're using the term blended learning. And what we mean by that for the University of Aberdeen is that we are fully able to deliver all of your learning in an online environment, should that be required, because we know that there are students in all sorts of different circumstances who, for whatever reason, may not actually be able to return to campus. So that's one aspect to it. In terms of the overall blended part of it, though, it is about being able to offer you an education on campus in some way when you're able to arrive. And hopefully for many of you, that will be towards the beginning of the academic year or at the beginning of the academic year. But if not, it's about join when you can. So there will be lots of activities in an online environment. Our lecturers have done some really innovative work to create very engaging sessions, which would normally take place in the lecture theatre. We're not having, as you know, we're not having large lectures because we can't put lots of people into the same room together for safety reasons. So all of that will be online. So all our students will be engaging in the online environment with the materials and the activities. But for those students who can come back to campus, there will be an in-person experience, and that will depend on the discipline that they're in. And finally, there will also, for many students, be live sessions in the online environment. It's not all about you going away and doing the work in your own time in a flexible way. It's also about having that connection in the online environment with your lecturers and with other peers.
Thank you. It sounds like there's going to be quite a bit of um, variety on how to engage, student to student. So thank you for clarity on that. So another question is, if we're going to have tutorials and we're going to have to present, how is that going to happen online?
Yeah, so that's a little bit back to what I was saying before. So to expand on that a wee bit, as I say, we know that not everybody will be able to arrive with us on day one. So there will be opportunities through Collaborate, which for those students who've been with us for a while will know that environment where you can have that interaction, that engagement with your lecturer, with your other peers in your student group. So it might feel a bit different, or it will feel a bit different than being in the classroom, but we're anticipating that we'll be able to create an environment that is conducive to that interaction. And a lot of us, haven't we, over the past few weeks, months, have got used to operating in that sort of environment. I know myself, I've been to conferences where there are breakout groups and so on, and that's been really successful in helping us to create those connections. So we'll be taking some of that into your experience.
Thank you. I myself got in a situation where, because of the rapid move last semester, I had actually a group project that we had to present in a week, and there was an online, and it went pretty well. So hopefully, you will have
Great.
the same experiences. So we have a next question, and it's regarding exams. Are exams going to be moved online, or what is going to happen with the exams?
Yeah, so for those students who are returning who know how we usually function, there won't be a formal exam diet in the first half session. Instead, we're going to be using alternative assessments, and they could take a whole range of different ways of working. So it could be timed assessments, but in a much longer slot, for example, over a 48-hour window, open book exams, essays, online tests, that sort of thing. And it could be that rather than having that final couple of weeks where you do all of the assessment in one go, that it's much more about how you are assessed over the period of the 12 weeks when you're back into the new semester. So students will find that this is a little bit different, perhaps, than they've been used to before in certain situations, but each of the schools and each of the courses will make sure that all of our students know exactly how the assessment will work.
So it sounds like there's going to be more continuous approach without rather having big spikes in a semester as in the past. Would you? Yeah.
I would agree. And the other thing that we want to ensure is that there's opportunities for students to get feedback as they go along. So that's sort of what we call formative assessment, so that you can see how you're doing as you go along. And actually, I know there are lots of disadvantages to the COVID-19 situation, but there have also been lots of opportunities for us to really look at how we do things and to very much work towards improving what we did well and building on that for this particular context.
It will be interesting to see what kind of changes will last even after the situation is over. So hopefully we can all improve from that.
Yeah, and actually, Ondrej, just in relation to that, one of the things that we're going to be doing is evaluating what happens over the next half session, so that one, we can see what's happening with students almost in real time. So if we need to make some adjustments, we understand what those adjustments are. But exactly what you say, what has gone really well in all of this, and what can we take with us as we go into the next phase, which we hope will be sort of more like the normal we've been used to.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. So we have our next question, which is a little bit more difficult to address very quickly. So
Yeah.
it's regarding the no detriment policy. So is it going to be another no detriment policy for new semester, or how is that going to work?
Okay, so I've jotted a couple of notes down here, so you'll see me glancing to the side just to make sure that I get everything in here, because as you say, it's quite a complicated area. So the first thing that I do want to say is that we have embedded an approach that is very flexible in terms of working with and supporting students. So, for example, we want to make sure that it's not difficult to report absence, that kind of thing, and that we really do take into account the circumstances. So the no detriment procedures that we put in place when everything happened last March, and we did the work in sort of April time, um, still apply to the students who were and who are in their honours years at the time of the COVID-19 crisis. So that applies to the assessments that were taken at that particular time. We've now moved into sort of more of a planned approach. So it wasn't as reactive, because remember, we were on campus and on one day, and then we were off campus the next, and we had to work really quickly. So we've had a number of months now to plan and to ensure that we've got things in place that will support students. So now that we've moved into that, we're more prepared for the circumstances, I think. We expect that students will be able to perform and achieve their potential over the coming academic year because of everything that we've got in place, as we've been discussing. And there are aspects of the no detriment procedures that are embedded within our policies, and we've just taken all of those through our Senate so that it's really clear. So, for example, I've mentioned this already, but we'll be very flexible about how absence is managed in relation to the COVID situation. But there will be communications going out to our students so that all of this is really clear, because it's important that people understand exactly where they stand around this. And Ondrej, I know that you're doing some work with some people in my team to make sure that we're talking in plain English around all of this so that people do understand what's going on here.
Thank you. So on that topic, everybody will receive, a code of conduct. Is that correct? That is applicable to them with all relevant information, so that there is not going to be just one this year.
So all students will receive a communication that provides information about the academic regulations and any other regulations that sit around all of that, so that there is clarity. And I will want to work really closely with you, Ondrej, to make sure that it is very clear for our students. And of course, in amongst all of this, there is always the opportunity for students, if they've got any queries, to contact our email address at InfoHub. So, because we know there's a lot of information out there. And actually, what we also know is that until a student needs a policy, it's often not until they need it that they start to have a look at it. And that's really understandable because there's so much to take on board. So we're going to keep the communication going around all of that.
That's really good. And I'm going to switch it up a little bit. So, building up on what you've said about InfoHub, we had a question submitted regarding whether somebody can go into InfoHub in person. Is that going to be possible in the semester?
Yes. So the InfoHub, along with a number of other front-facing services like accommodation, IT, finance, registry, and so on, they'll be operating out of Elphinstone Hall. For those of you, the students who haven't arrived yet and don't know our campus, you will easily find Elphinstone Hall. We'll make sure that it's easy for you to arrive there. It's a beautiful old building, and we'll be housing many of those front-facing services. So they'll be around from the 21st of September to the 9th of October, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Of course, we'll have physical distancing and other restrictions in place, and all students will be required to adhere to those restrictions, but you will be able to see people in person. So we're really pleased about that.
So that's really good that students will be able to access some of these services in person and on campus. But are all of these services also going to be accessible online?
Yep, that's a really good question. Yes, they are. All of our services are currently accessible online. As I said, one of the benefits of this situation is that we've done a lot of work to do the sorts of things that mean that these kinds of services are really very accessible to our students. So yes, everything is online. That means that if something happens where we have to revert to increased restrictions, for example, because of government guidance, we will be able to do that because we're very well prepared around all of that.
Okay, that's very great to hear. So another question would be, what facilities a student can access in person? What is going to be open and how can they access it?
Yep, so we're still working on all of this in terms of getting the specifics around what that's going to look like. And as per usual, there'll be some communications coming out around that. But students will be able to access teaching facilities, including labs where that's appropriate, and performance areas, study spaces, the library, refreshment facilities, and of course our beautiful grounds. So we want to encourage, where the weather permits, people being outside and in a physical distancing way, being able to interact. So our facilities will be open. They will be subject to health and safety measures, as you would expect. I mean, all of us are going into supermarkets and all sorts of other public spaces and having to adjust to the way that we are in those spaces. And our students, and I know they will do this, will need to do that too. When our students sign up, they will be saying that they are going to adhere to the restrictions, to the requirements, and that's so that they've got their own safety and our other students' safety and our staff safety and our community safety at the heart. And I'm sure that all of our students will want to do that, and will do that, every day as we start to move back into this new world.
Thank you. On that topic, after this recording is finished, I'll post a link in a chat that will essentially outline the Scottish guidelines so that people who are not from Scotland can actually have a look and see whether they differ from where they currently are or whether they're roughly the same, so they can sort of get an idea of what to expect. So another question was a little bit more vague. So it's about tutorials. So how are tutorials going to be run at large? Clearly they're going to differ from course to course, but what is the main idea behind tutorials this semester?
Yeah. So we're talking here about in-person tutorials, I think, aren't we,
Yeah.
Ondrej? Yeah. So as I've said, when it's safe to do so, we will run those tutorials. I've actually just come from a timetabling meeting where we were talking about all of that. Students will be in smaller groups than they used to, and there might be some advantages to that, as you said earlier, Ondrej. Students will have to adhere to physical distancing requirements. When students come into the room, they will be asked to do a little bit of cleaning for their own space, same as you would when you go into the supermarket and you have to clean your trolley. But we'll provide very detailed information so that students are really clear about that. And then there's the moving around. So it's not just about being in the classroom, but the flow into and out of the rooms. And again, all of the guidance, all of the information will be there, and you'll be signposted so that people know where they need to go in relation to moving around the buildings.
That's really useful. So hopefully that provides a little bit more clarity to our students about what they might expect. So these at large were all of the questions that were submitted. Actually, there was one more question regarding whether the university will provide face masks and how, the moving around a little bit more tight spaces such as McRobert are going to work under the current circumstance.
Yep. So the first part of your question about face masks, yes, the university will provide face masks. And in relation to moving around the buildings, whether it's McRobert or anywhere else, there will be very specific guidance around how we're going to manage all of that. It's also not about just in the buildings, it's also about queuing outside. So one of the things that's been really interesting at Aberdeen, and some of our students who are maybe listening to this will be aware, is that we've had an Aberdeen lockdown. And the Aberdeen lockdown arose in town. It was nothing to do with the university, but arose in town because of queuing outside of venues. I think one of the positives that we can take from that, though, is that we've learnt about how to manage those situations. Aberdeen, the city itself, has learnt about how to manage those situations. And I came from a meeting yesterday with Aberdeen City Council, and where they were talking to us about the students coming back and how excited they are that our students are coming back, but how they're going to be managing the city centre. And the expectation is that we all have to take some responsibility in relation to that. And again, I know that our students will do that. But anything that we can find a positive in this situation, we always do, and it is about the learning and what we are able to do to make this situation as safe as possible for all of our students.
I would very much agree that all of us, not just the university, but different venues in Aberdeen have learned from the previous lockdown. So hopefully it is only going to get better from now on. So these were the only questions that were submitted, but there are some things that I wanted to talk to you about. And that is mainly about students who would choose to not come to university for health and safety reasons. Uh, would they be able to, and would they be disadvantaged if they chose to?
Okay, so I might even just use it a slightly different term. So I think they are coming to university. It's just that they're coming to university in a different way. But I'm being pedantic because I know what you mean by that, Ondrej. You mean people coming back to our campus. So as I said earlier on, all of our lecturers are preparing all of their courses so that they're available fully online, so that you can get all of your learning, all of your teaching, all of your assessment, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what your circumstances are. Of course, it's going to feel a little bit different than a traditional university experience that one might have expected here at the University of Aberdeen, but it does mean that all the learning can take place. So no, people won't be disadvantaged. We will want to make sure that we create connections with students who aren't coming to campus. And there are lots of ways that that will happen through personal tutor, through course coordinators, through some of our student services. And I guess the final thing I would say is we hope that we will spot all of our students who feel that they need support, but we might not. And so I'm just saying to students, if you feel that you need support, please just let us know. We're set up for that. We want to make sure that you have the best possible experience even within these circumstances.
That's really great. I'm gonna post some links in there as well about where you can find support, or you can contact me directly if you wish to. So one other point that I wanted to ask is about students that might have some provisions, for example, for lectures. Will they be getting any those kind of provisions, or in the online environment, or do you have any message for them?
Yeah, so if students have a disability that they've shared with us through their UCAS form, there's a whole set of steps that are in place that will ensure that they get what they need to support their learning. There are a number of areas where this is relevant. So, for example, timing in assessment. Quite often, if an individual has a particular learning requirement, they will get additional time. But actually, the way that we're setting up the alternative assessment should mean that all of our students are able to access that without additional support. However, if there are particular circumstances for any individual student, what we're saying is to contact our student experience team or our student support team, and we'll make sure that those are dealt with. In relation to perhaps support in the classroom, we have things like captioning in place for our lecture style materials. Now, I do want to say that captioning will be in place in most cases. It's not always completely accurate because it's done on an automatic basis, but it's pretty good. But if there are ever any issues with any of that, what we're saying to students is just raise that with us. We think it's probably good enough. We think it is good enough, but we just want to make sure that everybody's circumstances are accounted for.
So when you're talking about captioning, do you mean subtitles or do you mean lecture capture?
I'm talking about subtitles. So that's the captioning of what's being said. And there are ways that that's done through our systems. Lecture capture is slightly different. So that's the recording of lectures. There are going to be probably very few live lectures as such, but live lectures in an online environment, but where they do happen, they will be recorded so that students who aren't able to access that particular session at the time will be able to access it later. What we're not recording are tutorials. And the reason we're not recording those is that we never have. Tutorials are a space in which you can have quite open discussions about interesting and challenging topics. And it is expected that our students will attend those, whether they're elsewhere in the world or whether they're on campus. And there will be opportunities for students to do that either in the online environment or on campus.
Yeah, thank you for giving clarity on that. So we've talked a little bit about labs and what's happening with labs. Would you happen to know anything that's happening with performance that, for example, art students might be going through and having questions about?
Yeah, so where there would normally be an audience, that's clearly not going to be possible. So we're looking at small group work and potentially one-to-one tuition related to the performance around that. So it will feel a little bit different, but that very focused support and that very focused way of working with individual students, we hope will be a really positive experience for our students. In relation to all of these sorts of areas, though, the schools will be in touch with their students. Some of them have already, to give a bit more detail about what the experience will be like for each of the courses.
Thank you for providing more information on that topic. So hopefully they're either in touch or will be soon. Um, so I have just two more comments. So one of them would be, um, if I cannot get to Aberdeen at the start of the term, is there option that I could essentially come in at a later point, or do I have to wait for a second semester? Is there options in that regard?
Yeah, so we have used the catchphrase, join us when you can. What I would really strongly advise, though, is that when students are thinking of coming back, taking that decision to come back, or the circumstances allow for them to come back, that they get in touch with us so that we know what's happening, so that we can provide support where that's needed. But yeah, basically, students can come back when they can, albeit with the caveat of it depends what's going on in the wider world. But of course, we hope that that will be possible for our students.
Okay, thank you. So my last question would be, if some of the programs might include placements, such as medicine or
Mhm.
education, what is happening there?
Well, we've already got students who are out on placement. A number of our medical students are out on placement right around the region, actually, as far up as the Highlands. So we're working in line with national guidance. We're ensuring that the correct health and safety requirements are in place to plan the placement activity. And again, whether it's education, whether it's medicine, whether it's dentistry, physicians associates, schools are keeping in touch with their students to ensure that they know what's going on there.
Okay, thank you. So hopefully they're also being connected with their lecturers and students. Um, so thank you for that. So I'm just going to wrap it up a little bit. So as I've previously mentioned, I will go through the comments very shortly, and I'll try to collate them and address them just in a moment. I'm also going to add the link to the FAQs, which are the frequently asked questions, in case you have any outstanding questions that might already be answered there. So I'll include that. And I'm also going to include link for the orientation modules. So we've redone our orientation this year in the light of current events. So there's lots of new links that might be really useful to both new and returning students. So you should have a look at those. It has tons of useful information, so please do. Um, but I want to thank to everyone who has stayed and watched this session. And I want to thank you, Ruth, for taking your time and talking to the students about what the semester is going to look like and what should they essentially expect. So do you have any last comments for students?
Well, just to say thank you for watching, and very much looking forward to you coming back to university, whatever that means for you, whether it's online or on campus, and very much looking forward to the buzz of the campus. And please stay in touch with us. And I suppose one piece of advice would be keep an eye on your emails. There will be quite a lot of information coming out and that will be very helpful to you. And just keep in touch with that. And if you've got any queries, you can always get in touch with us through the InfoHub. And we'd be delighted to answer those big or small queries that you might have for us. Look forward to seeing you all soon.
We're all looking forward to welcoming you very soon. And if you have any questions, you can contact either me or InfoHub. So I'm looking forward to everyone, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.